Recall that Stone Romero and Rasopa in their article make the argument that many researchers commit the fallacy of affirming the consequent when they are discussing the results of their mediation tests. And here's how they do so. First, for premise 1, we have this true statement. If there is a mediation in the population, the mediation that I propose specifically, I will observe X pattern of B weights in my analyses. So I'm going to run this test. I'll observe this pattern of findings. Premise 2, I actually observed this exact pattern that I was looking for. Conclusion, I will say that there is this proposed mediation in the population. This conclusion does not naturally follow or necessarily follow from the two premises. The reason for this is because, recall from a couple slides ago, that there are many models that also would demonstrate that same pattern of B weights, in addition to our proposed model. So thinking back to the last segment, just as there are many different ways to be in Washington besides being in Seattle, so there are many models that are consistent with one pattern of B weights. Okay, and my proposed model is actually just one of the many different possibilities. Okay, so again, just to reiterate, just as there are many ways to be in Washington besides Seattle, so there are many other potentially causal models that are also consistent with this certain pattern of B weights, and my proposed model is just one of those possibilities. So this is a logical mistake that we can make. And so when we test causal models, we have to be very careful with how we present our findings in a way that doesn't commit this fallacy. So here are some ways to do that. First, we want to avoid, when we have a non-experimental study, we would like to avoid things like effect or impact. So we're going to observe the impact of X on Y through M. We want to avoid that language because that implies causality. It's better to say a relationship or association or the prediction of X to our outcome will look like this, for example. We can also be very clear in stating that patterns of B weights that were observed are consistent with my proposed model of mediation, but they do not confirm it. It doesn't mean that I can now say that this mediation relationship does exist. All I can say is that this pattern of B weights is consistent with my model, and we also can say it's also consistent with this kind of model, and this model, and this model as well. So we can discuss other plausible causal models that are also consistent with our data, and we can attempt to rule them out using logic, maybe just giving some suggestions for future research and follow-on studies that may clarify and rule out some more alternatives. Also, what are some potential confounds that you didn't capture? Could it be that the relationship between X and Y that we see isn't causal at all, but rather a third variable is making it look like they are causally linked? Is the causality reversed or reciprocal? Sometimes we can rule that out by making the DV the IV in the mediation and then testing it again and comparing the model fit, which you'll learn next class how to do next quarter. I had a reviewer actually ask me to do that when we had a non-experimental test of mediation, and the reviewer, or the editor of the journal, asked us to please, my co-author and I, asked us to please reanalyze the data, putting the DV first, and then comparing the model fit to show that it was less likely that the DV was causing the IV and then causing the moderator as well. So I had to test a couple alternative models and rule those out. And that is possible. Again, statistical tests can help us a little bit in this regard, but also just logic and using your own expertise of your field can be helpful for ruling out plausible alternative models. So this is the idea of affirming the consequent. So please understand this concept at a very deep level. Understand what affirming the consequent fallacy is and why it matters to how we talk about the results of our mediation, especially when we have a mediation that is derived from a non-experimental design.